Hi, Guido Fox here. Welcome by a new book report. And today I want to discuss with you Western guilt, myth or reality. It's written by Raisa, Blommestein, Paul Cliteur, Bart Collard, and Perry Perique. Four guys, and with a pre-note from Ayan Hirsi Ali. It's a book about Western guilt, and I think that it's interesting to talk about this subject as a coach, because I think as a coach, as a life coach, you are also living in a society and you have to deal with the society. So also there, I think it's important to understand some society issues and make a society analysis there. Yeah, this book is about Western guilt, and I think it's interesting to understand what is our Western guilt, where it comes from, and what are the most important issues in this book. What is the red line here in this book? And what you see is that Western guilt is a combination of different factors. And I should say, let's start with Christianity, with our belief system, because our religious belief system is based on the original sin. We are sinful as human beings. We were eating the apple from the tree of knowledge from Adam and Eve, and therefore we are guilt. We are guilt, we have to suffer, and if we suffer a lot, then we can become in heaven ultimate. So if we suffer, we have suffered for the world. Jesus was suffering for us. And if we suffer all together, then we become in heaven. Then heaven is come on earth. Then we become all enlightened, right? So we are grow up. And I say not only grow up in your personal way, but if you see the Western continent, Western Europe, and Europe in total, we were growing up in a guilt, suffering way of thinking. And that plays a role from the Roman Empire to now. All those ages, with the dark ages, with we burning women on fires, all those crazy mass psychological things, what happened in Christianity, is based on guilty feelings about suffering. And I should say one thing, what I learned in the spiritual knowledge is that guilty feelings for a long time are so spiritual, destructive for your happiness, for your self-confidence, and for your way forward. So Western guilt is originally based on this Christian wrongly perspective about religious growth. Because the tree of knowledge is nothing more than out of your mind and becoming more meditative and going more internally aware, become more silent, more quiet, more out of mind. So all those priests and politicians from all those ages back misinterpret the story of Adam and Eva, and therefore all the followers in Christianity and European citizens were taught wrongly that you have to suffer and that you have to stay in guilt to raise to heaven. So everything is based on a misinterpretation of the story of Adam and Eve, and that is very painful to see as a spiritual life coach, that this misinterpretation is ultimate cause the nowadays politics from guilty aspects. So we feeling ourselves guilty from our past. Our DNA is from the original sin, right? And transfer from DNA of DNA in lives. And therefore we're feeling ourselves guilty for the rest of the whole world. Therefore we adopt a lot of immigration streams from people who cannot offer some creativity, positive way of living. We absorbing people from people all over the world. We have to carry for people all over the world here in Europe because we feeling guilty. We have to care for our neighbors, right? In Christianity it is love your neighbors, but we are forgot to love ourselves. Love ourselves first, then your neighbors. Otherwise your giving love will be dangerous because we don't love ourselves. We don't love ourselves as European continent. We have to be more proud of ourselves. So I want to discuss that later with you. Are we proud, or is our culture weak or strong or whatever? But you see, from these guilty feelings, we absorb immigration streams, what is not good for us on the long term. We are caring for all the climate issues in all over the world. You see in China, Russia, South America, USA, they all pumping oil from the ground. They take gas, and we have to step over to windmills and sun power, what is not very profitable. So there is also a kind of suffering element. We have to suffer. We have to become poor as hell because we have to save the world. And there is also a kind of superiority complex. We are Europe. We are the EU. We are the best in the world. We have a democracy. We have democratic values. So we are the best, and we have to teach other continents who doing it another way, another democratic regime, another kind of regime who take care of his people. So we always be a little bit arrogant about Europe. We are Europe, we are the EU, and we tell the world how to live. And that superiority complex is coming from insecurity. Insecurity feed by guilt. So we feeling ourselves guilty from our past, and therefore we going to be superior. We have a guilty complex, we have an insecurity complex, and then the superiority complex is rising up. So in the psychology, you see always that movement. You go from guilty, insecurity, and then you go teach other continents how to live. We were sending army guys to Afghanistan, who is in the evolution in the 6th centuries, and we sending them there to say, you have to build up a democracy there. You have to do it in 10 years. Are you crazy? Of course not, it doesn't work. Every culture has its own evolutionary path. Every culture has its own history. So I think we have to be more respectful to other continents in the world. So guilty feelings from the past, guilty feelings about World War II, what Europe was doing there. Nationalism, guilty about nationalism, because nationalism leads to kind of war probably. I don't think so. Germany was very poor. Very poor at the moment, pre-World War II. Because France wants to get money from Germany because of World War I. So we make them poor, and from poorness war is coming, not from nationalism. We're feeling ourselves guilty about colonism, about our built-up welfare in the past. But there's a lot of research that slavery was not so huge and was more a normal thing in the past. The Arab slavery was much more heavier and intenser than the Western slavery. So we cling to the past. We are clinged to the past, and that's not good because we have to move forward, right? We can learn from the past, of course, but we staying clinged to the past. And if we are staying clinged to the past, we cannot move further. We cannot raise our awareness levels to a more happy, self-confident society. That is what's happening here, I think, in this analysis. Bruckner was saying on page 22, Bruckner was saying the tyranny of guilt in 2006. The tyranny of guilt. So if a continent or a collective consciousness is feeling themselves constantly guilty, then self-hatred exists, and that can ruin Western civilization. And that's an important sentence from Bruckner. He say here that self-hatred can lead to ruin, destructiveness of our Western civilization. It's like a monster. And that is true, I think. I mean, if you're insecure yourself and you hate yourself, you're building down your personality, right? And not building up your personality. So Bruckner was right here. Self-hate can lead to a destructive influence in our Western build-up civilization. So that's the part about guilt, about Western guilt, the analysis, the political and the society analysis there. Now I want to go to the next subject, and I think it's a very important subject, is about the mob rule. That is what you see also nowadays in political and society atmosphere, the mob rule. And I talked in the past video in diversity, identity and cultural wars about the raising up of capitalism for the last couple of decades, and that has a consequence that people become more one and uniform, and they becoming more a gray consumer crowd, because capitalism leads to globalism, a lot of big companies, and from marketing reasons they want to have one gray consumer mass, a sheep mass to sell their products to, and without any personal core essence or religious growth. So what you get is an Massenmensch, a mass crowd without their own opinion, because they're slaves from capitalism to buy products. All right, so the theory here is that big firms has to survive, and they want to sell their products to slaves. So we're living in a slave society, or people try to make us slaves, because following only your needs, your hedonistic lifestyle makes you slaves, right? So that's the theory behind about mob rule and what I said in the last video. And what you create, and that's what Murray was saying, and also Osho was saying, is that you get a mad crowd. The mad crowd. And that is totally egalitarianism, everyone is the same, everyone has the same opinion, there are no difference anymore in people. So we get one gray mass of people who are mad. That's what Murray was saying here. You get the mad people and the mob rule. And that people are voting for mob leaders, right? We're living in a democracy. So mob, not smart crowd, mad crowd, slave crowd, big slave crowd are voting for mediocre politicians. And that is what you see nowadays. The mob is ruling there. And what, not only that the mob is not growing in personal growth, because if you grow in personal growth in development and in more awareness, then of course you don't vote for mediocre politicians, right? So that's also what you see there. So you get extreme egalitarianism, extreme the same everyone, and the chances, and that is what Montesquieu was saying, if you have one big gray mass of people, they think they live in a democratic society, then it's very easy to have one person, despotism, one person who can grab the power over the slaves. Because a slave society is easy to control. So that's the risk of when people are stay dumb, are stay slave, and not working in a kind of personal development way on themselves. So that is what you see in this analysis about the mob rule. And I find it quite interesting because I don't want to live in a totalitarian society. And Fortuyn was saying something very interesting on page 96. Was a former politician, Fortuyn, who was shot by a left-wing activist. And he was saying something very interesting here on page 96. We are living in a time without richting, without purpose, without direction, without ideology views, and without ideas, without fathers. We don't have fathers, real fathers, and we don't have mothers. So we're living in a society of wezen, of people of no views, weak persons. This is what Fortuyn was writing, wrote in his book. And that's true, right? We don't live in a time where there are leaders. So we are going there with our country, and I want to be about 20 years. I want to have this result, and kind of visionary, right? You want to have visionaries on the position in the political arena. Someone who say, okay, I want to be on 20 years, I want to have this reach, and if not, I go away. I take care. I'm responsible about my own results. I take responsible if my country is not going on the way I want that it goes. So that's what Fortuyn was saying. We are living in a kind of period with no direction and no clear vision. And then spiritual emptiness. If you read Gazlov was a guy, historic guy, and he came over from Russia to the United States. He transferred, and he was saying, then you get spiritual emptiness. If there's no direction in society, if there's no vision about the future, where are we going, what we want with each other, then there is spiritual emptiness. Then it is kind of nihilism. Yeah, we all do something, we don't do what we want, we have just a job, just a relationship, we live our lives, but if there is no purpose, then there is spiritual emptiness there. Oh, that is interesting, right? No direction in life, no vision in life is spiritual emptiness, and that is, of course, also unhappiness. Other interesting topic is page 138. 138 is about the paradox of tolerance. And I find it a very interesting issue, the paradox of tolerance. How far we have to go in a Western society to accept intolerance. How far we have to go to absorb intolerant people. And what he was saying here on page 143, that is from Karl Popper. Karl Popper was writing dit. Karl Popper. The paradox of tolerance. And if you absorb so many intolerant people, at a certain level, there are no tolerant people anymore. Or they are destroyed, or they are so weak that they don't have a voice anymore. So that discussion I remember from my political education as always a discussion how far absorption is okay, right? If you absorb the good things from cultures and you can grow from it, then it's just totally okay. But how far you have to go to accept intolerance? And a certain moment is slush, and you hold your power. As a nation or as a continent, you have your values and you say stop, we don't accept intolerance anymore. And that is cultural weakness. He was saying that on page 148, cultural weakness. And that is significant for the Western world. We are cultural-wise weak. And of course, then you accept all those intolerance because you're hoping that it then become better in the future. But that is a weak and fear mechanism. That is from fear. We are so fearful, we are so weak, and then we accept a lot of intolerance because we hope, okay, I hope that it's become better in the future. I hope that's become better in the future. But that's an attitude. That's an attitude from weakness. That is an attitude from fear. That's not a good attitude. So that is also what's playing a role here. The paradox of tolerance, Western guilt. How far is our guilt to accept the tolerance from other people coming into our country, our continent? Western guilt with the with tyranny of guilt. That's destructive for our Western civilization. The tyranny of guilt. Also, be aware. I mean, if you adopt so many people from different cultures, how is the support for the Western civilization? If in the countries where they come from, there's no democratic values. So how is the support of this system? Is the system nog wel working if so many people are not underwrite our democratic values? It's also good to think about that. Page 198. And I love and I like this distinction. And it is so remarkable. I lived in the city, but I had also connection with people from the land and from the nature. And you see really a difference between the urbanmensch and the landmensch. And it is an analysis from Kalergi and also Kalergi. Kalergi was saying that, very interesting, about the difference between the landmanch and the urbanmensch. And the urbanmensch is living in the city, and the urbanmensch is abstract, mechanic and rational. And the landmensch is concrete, pragmatical, organic, and irrational, and more emotional and more believing. And I think if I can say something about the landmensch, is also more calm, peaceful, and aware, because you live more closer by nature. You live more direct by nature. You will be influenced by nature, by trees, by beautiful fields. And you're more relaxed, I think, if you live closer by nature, and you can think also more clear. You say also sometimes here in Netherlands, boerenverstand. You have farmers' knowledge. Farmers' knowledge is so good knowledge. It's more intuitive. Clear mind is not the Excel society where people are doing 8 to 10 hours on a screen and they think they are smart. And nowadays what you see is a big problem, because people from the land don't feel themselves politically supported in the political decision policies, because they are with less people, and most people are living in urban regions, and they're voting on other parties. And what you see nowadays, that people from the city are going to decide what to do with the nature. And that is a strange thing, right? Because people who live close by the nature cannot say something about the nature, but the urbanmensch is deciding something, what is happening by the surroundings of the landmensch. And this kind of friction, right? It is friction. It is friction in the political arena and the political analysis, from who is supporting the landmensch and who is supporting the urbanmensch. That is what you see. I live myself in the city, but I live like a landmensch. I'm so much in the nature. And I prefer also to live in the future again to the Vinkenveense Plassen, where I lived before. That is the most beautiful place on earth. To go back to the nature and live closer by the nature, but by circumstances now are not so good to transfer back to the nature places. But this kind of political friction you see, and I hope that it's not causing problems there, or friction between the landmensch and the urbanmensch. And he was saying that in 1922. In 1922, he was saying, Kalergi already, from it will become an issue. The urbanmensch and the landmensch, the way of thinking, the way of being, they are quite different. So that's also something what I found very interesting. Fortuyn in this book, Western Guilt, and I wanna thank you for watching this book report, and I see you by the next episode. Western Guilt, thank you for watching. Bye bye.